Hey class, Kristen here. We are going to set up a walk cycle in Toon Boom Harmony Premium. And this will be an 8-frame walk cycle as described by Richard Williams in the Animator Survival Kit book. So we're going to start with a layout drawing. So I'm just going to Command R, add a new drawing, call this layout. And this will be just like my guide layer, my timing and spacing charts. It'll be the layer that I want to keep underneath um, my animation on all frames. Um, so I'm using the brush tool, but if you hold down the shift key, it turns your brush stroke. Here's your normal brush stroke, and hold down shift. It turns it into like a straight line ruler. So then you can click and let go, and then you have a straight line. So here's my ground line that my character is going to walk across, and I'm going to rough in my character, assuming I have a character design. So I'm just going to keep this simple. And sketch in the pose of the contact drawing. Okay, so this is roughly the layout of my scene. Here's my main character. They're just gonna walk in and walk out. So, what I'm actually going to do though is draw in two ground lines because I want the feet to each have their own little track. And this makes for a clearer silhouette between the two contact poses. Our two key poses are contact drawings where the feet make contact, right? But the feet are in different positions. And so having them on different little tracks here will make the silhouette easier to read. Also, it'll make drawing it less confusing. Um, so I recommend that you keep your feet on separate tracks. I'm just going to fix this. I don't really like it. I'm erasing it by just holding down the E button on my keyboard, and that allows me to very quickly switch to a different tool while staying in the brush. So whenever I hold down E, I can just quickly switch, but then as soon as I let go, I'm still in the brush tool. So that just makes it really fast and seamless. Okay, so here's like the gesture, you could say, of my scene. And then we can begin to start roughing the animation on top of it. So I'm going to make a new layer for that. I want to keep this layout layer underneath. I'm going to just extend the exposure of that drawing. I have it programmed to F5 on my keyboard. I had to turn off other settings on my computer in order to enable the function keys. But you can also select the range you want and then just hit this button on the timeline. Okay, there's our layout. It will exist for the duration of my scene, and I will turn it off before I render it. Now I'm going to add a new drawing layer, Command R, or under that menu, and this will be my rough animation. All right, this is where I'm going to start drawing in the main poses of my walk cycle. So keep it pretty rough. And then for the legs, I'm actually going to switch colors just for my own sanity to tell them apart. Because once we start piling on the drawings here, here's a little hip, it gets pretty confusing. It's also a good reason to have the feet on different tracks to help. So I'm going to make sure the feet and the body is animating properly before I add in the arms. The arms will come after because that's the secondary action. I want to make sure the primary action of the feet and the body is working the way I want and is positioning the way I want before I draw in the arms. Okay, so here's my first key pose contact position. Then at frame 9, we will add our second key pose, which is the other contact position. Somewhere there. So just to make sure I stay in the volume of my character, I'm just going to select, just holding down S and copy. Just paste that here, just so, whoops, I want to stay, make copy and paste, and then stay in that tool, move this over, make sure they're the same height, and if I hold down shift at the same time, it will keep things lined up. Then I'll add the legs in. So we want this foot to stay planted in the ground. So make sure the toes line up, make sure the heel lines up. This toe remains on the ground. It's the last part of the foot to leave the ground, and so it stays planted for this entire step. Otherwise, your character will look like it's sliding around on the ground, like it's walking on a treadmill or moonwalking. This needs to be a little bit wider. All right. Okay, and then now let's add our passing position. So passing position will happen at frame 5. And I'm just deleting that exposure here. Delete all of these. Okay, and now I want my onion skin back and extend it over. All right, and now my passing position will be a little bit higher. And again, make sure those feet are lined up so this whole foot gets planted, and just make sure that's lined up. And then again, using different colors really helps to make things clearer. So here's the passing position. All right, and then I'll extend this exposure and turn off onion skin. So here we have it. This actually looks like the body is lower. There. All right. Okay, so here's my second contact drawing. And, you know, in another 8 frames is when the cycle will start over. So for now, I'm just going to copy and paste these drawings, select that foot 2, copy and paste that over to frame 17, which is where my, turn off onion skin, which is where my cycle will start over again. So S, oh, I do need onion skin. Make sure you're always lining up the feet. Make sure the feet are always lined up, always planted on the ground. Otherwise, your character will look like it's sliding around or doing the moonwalk unintentionally. So here we have the blocking for our cycle, and let's just quickly add in the passing pose here. So I can delete this frame. Oops. Draw in my passing position. And sometimes I like to go to drawing view so that I don't have to stretch the onion skin as far, because in drawing view, it's just showing me how many drawings are in front instead of how many exposures. So it just feels a little bit more manageable. Okay, so the passing position. I kind of want to match the previous passing position, so I'm just moving the onion skin bracket here. Front leg, actually the back leg is the one that's planted this time. And then the front leg is passing. Extend that exposure. Oops. All right, so now here is the beginning of our walk cycle. So we can quickly add in-betweens. Okay, this is where the weight will come down just a tiny little bit because now the character is like shifting the weight. So this foot gets planted and it starts to bend under the weight. That's why the body comes down, because the knee starts to bend. And then this back foot starts to lift up. Actually, the foot kind of trails behind. Okay. Extend that exposure. And then in between here as well. So this is the up position, meaning that after passing, it's now, the character is now almost like pushing off of this toe. And so that's what sort of elevates the entire body higher than the passing position, because there's a little bit of a stretch happening in the leg through the toe down here. All right, so we'll finish the in-betweens and complete the walk cycle. Okay, so here we have our rough walk cycle. And now we'll add the arms. Okay, so this is a character with noodly arms, and we have our completed walk cycle. Now, when I clean up my rough animation, I'm going to make sure the arms are swinging on an arc so that it feels just a little bit more natural, even though there's a lot of very loose, rubbery stretch and squash, and that's fine as long as it's moving and it looks believable and it feels like, it keeps the same volume the whole time that it's moving, even though it's kind of noodly. And I'm going to make sure it's going to travel on arcs. Now we have our completed walk cycle. And since it's a progressive walk cycle, meaning that the foot plants and the character progresses across the frame. So I'm going to delete this for now because what we're going to do is copy and paste these drawings, and then with this animation transformer mover tool, we're going to move this stack of drawings to a new position. So I'm going to select all of these frames and then right click, and you'll see it says create cycle. So let's say 4 cycles. And at this point, you'll want to make sure, I'm just going to zoom out of this timeline by hitting 1. You want to make sure that your timeline bracket is long enough and is extended far enough. So we have our walk cycle looping a bunch of times, but you can see the drawings pop back to their original position. So we're going to attach all of these drawings, these repeating drawings, we're going to attach them to a peg. This refers to a peg bar in drawn paper animation, which was a little plastic strip, and the paper that you would draw on had holes in it, and you would register all the pages to each other on this little peg bar. So Harmony and this menu has a digital peg bar. If you get this warning sign, just hit OK. You have to go to Scene, Default Display, and then just Display All. It's a little annoying it's not default already, but all right, let's go to this little plus sign, hit peg bar, and we're going to drag it to the top, and we want to make sure that the peg is actually on top of the rough animation layer. I'm just going to undo this instead. There we go. Let me try doing that more accurately. Okay, if you see where you're dragging it, you just want it to drag on top. And then we want to drag this rough on top of the peg. And so now that means that whatever we do to the peg will affect the drawings attached to it. So we're going to add keyframes on the peg. Keyframe. Let's set this to stop motion keyframe. And let's go to where the cycle repeats itself. Here, see how that pops back? I have my onion skin on. You can see here's our walk cycle progressing, and then all of a sudden it pops back. So on your peg layer, with that just selected, you'll see that this turns yellow when you're working on the peg. We're going to set another keyframe. And it's already a stop motion keyframe. Now we can position this, and what that means is that the entire stack of drawings following it in time is now being affected by the keyframe on this peg. So let's turn on onion skin, and we want to line up the feet. So he's taking this step, and then we want the toe and the heel to match. So let me change my onion skin because that's a little confusing. Make sure I'm on my peg, and then just move that around. So there we go. And we'll do the same thing the next time the cycle starts over. So we'll add a keyframe. Let's make that a stop motion keyframe. This one has to be stop motion keyframe. And then with onion skin turned on, we'll link up and make sure we're selected on the peg. We'll just link up the first drawing of the cycle, link the feet to the next. Let's fix this. Oopsie, I grabbed the drawings instead of the peg. There we go. And the same thing here. So, and there we have it, a progressive walk cycle.